should a software recall be called a recall?
Number one, I can't believe the media's fixation on recalls. We don't even report
it gets
them
headlines.
anymore. You know why?
Yeah.
Because they happen every single day of the week. If you go to NHTSA's website and look at service actions, recalls, it's a constant barrage. And the media sort of cherry picks what it's like. In fact, if you'll notice, most recall notices happen after 5 p.m. Eastern time on a Friday, just so that they miss the news cycle or try to miss the news cycle. And if it's an over-the-air update, who cares? I mean, you don't even know. So I'm with you, Chase. I don't think they should be called recalls.
I think Tesla and Rivian are great SEO for a lot of companies. I don't even think Tesla was in the top 10 this. Ford was number 1 for the 3rd year in a row. It's putting the wrong focus on what needs to be done to move these things forward.
I'm going to probably be the outlier of this group in that
prove us wrong.
For the moment, right? Recall is the term that the industry uses, the government uses, and we need to continue to use that. Going forward, do we need to rethink that term or add a sub term under it? Recall software update or whatever it is. Because the fundamental issue to me is while we say, like your point, Chase, and I have a Tesla as well. If you say yes to the software upgrade, it just happens. You don't have to take it to the. But if the government thinks it's a safety issue, like full self-driving or whatever it is, it's still a recall, right? Or maybe we use a different term, but it fundamentally, the government is saying there's a problem with the car that needs to be fixed. And it's great for a podcast and social media to argue over whether recall is the right term or not. But it's not about the word. It's the fact that the government has found a problem with the car that they believe needs to be fixed. And so whatever we call it,
I don't think we'd argue on that. I don't know if anyone else thinks. I think if. Right. And I don't have any argument with that. If the government or someone has said there's an issue, that's a pretty good reason to change something. Yeah. But I think, honestly, one of the other advantages to just calling it out more was, one, just to avoid consumer confusion. But two, it might actually be a reason to push automakers to have these software-defined vehicles even faster.
Hey, what are the reasons why the automakers want to get to software-defined vehicles, which is an enabler to a user-defined vehicle? But getting back to the SDV over-the-air update thing, they can save a fortune.
Yeah, exactly.
A fortune. A couple of keystrokes, boom, the car is fixed. Yeah. And that didn't work. Oh, here's another iteration. What did I just hear on After Hours yesterday? Tesla had to do 4 or 5 iterations of its latest quote unquote recall until it got it right. And so the other thing is I can't remember the exact number, but something like 25% of all recalled vehicles never go back to the dealership. People just don't care. When General Motors had the ignition key switch thing, I mean, they were sending out people door to door, knocking on doors, please do this. And people, get the hell off my lawn. They didn't care.
That is a much more practical and safer reason.
But you know what? If they get in an accident and they get damaged or, hurt or whatever, you bet they're going to sue the car company. So just from that standpoint alone, an automaker's going to be, wow. If we can fix this without even having to tell people, maybe legally we got to tell them, but that alone is why they'll want to do it.
Well, it's a physical or digital recall. I mean, really, it's something like. I agree with you, Loren, 100%. It is still a safety focused element of why the government said we have to address this. And so I think that, in that way, do we ditch the word recall? No, but I mean, as we just all discussed, it's like. Yeah, but man, does that get clicks if it's got the T word in front of it and recall, and all of a sudden, pow! It turns into how many eyeballs on your website for an article. Yeah. So
I think the other thing, Chase, is over-the-air updates are not all equal across the automakers.
That's also
right?
true.
That's something we can discuss too. Rivian and even Ford bricked a couple of their cars with software updates this year.
It down, right? But there's still automakers that say, "Oh, that software update, you need to take it to the dealer and have the dealer do it." And so maybe there needs to be a third component, right? And that's sort of really my point is that it's more than just, this software update, just click yes on the app and it's all good. Because That may
sure.
be your car, but it may not be the one that your neighbor owns, right?
Right.
Yeah, that is a great point. I've had software updates that have to go. I have to take the car in the dealership, and that to me is absurd. But
so it's like a remote recall or an in-person recall or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about. I mean, what we're discussing now is the perceived inconvenience or convenience of what's happening with related to what is this recall, right? And if you can address it, and I think, as John pointed out, man, the cost savings that go along with, we can address that with software, and we know how to do it with software. That's huge, but the moment you inconvenience your customer further, that's the part where I think the argument is happening now with Tesla. It's like, yeah, I wasn't inconvenienced by this. I literally, my car was in my garage, my phone went, and I looked at it and went, oh yeah, I'll download that software update. Sure, I'll go back to watching the game now. I didn't have to go anywhere, So I think it's that convenience factor that we're really mostly discussing, because at the end of the day, it's still about making the product more safe or better for the customer and the drivers, and in the end. But what did they have to do to resolve the problem that the OEM had identified? And yeah. So.
And I mean, obviously Tesla's the big one that was in the news lately, but Rivian, Lucid, they've had these same things. I think, to your point, Loren, too, the things that to me were really crazy that didn't get more attention was the software update Rivian sent out that then kind of prevented them not able to actually access the car.
Yeah, that was crazy.
They could drive it, but they couldn't access the computer. Not good. And then the Ford one, which was really temporary, but it just stopped the car altogether.
Yeah.
And to be realistic, there is pros and cons. Any technology has pros and cons. And for this over-the-air update, it's mostly good, but once again, it goes back to not having the right software know-how to execute it right.
One quick thing that I was thinking about, and Matt talks about this, I think in his sleep, right? But your question is about language, Chase, and fundamentally, it struck me as we were talking about this that everything we've been talking about. EV charging, software, you go down the list, recalls, etc. It's both for the industry and the consumers and the regulatory agencies and the government, the states, and everybody. EVs are an entirely new product category and an entirely new language, right?
Yeah.
And if we go back to the very beginning, early conversation, right? I had a cousin walk up years ago Thanksgiving and looked at the Tesla. Oh, that's a hybrid, right? People just don't understand the language,